Okay, well, guys, first of all, Mark Joffee is a friend and a rafter whitewater guy, and he has a great dog. I always like to tell you why everyone has pets, but yeah. Anyway, he's also a general contractor and he does a ton of work in North Boise, lives in North Boise, and there are so many different ways that you can add square footage lately. It has just been everywhere. Have you seen on the way to McCall or on the way to Idaho City, all these little like A-frames or little houses popping up? And then there's ADUs all over the place and the apartments above the garage or the detached house. And then it just gets interesting from there. Tiny houses. And I know tiny house community in Stanley where you can rent a tiny house. That's the sound effects for Stanley because, you know, it's the nature up there. Fancy sheds or not so fancy. My friend has a shed that he's turned into an office for work at home, but he put it on little concrete blocky things and he didn't pay a lot. They just delivered the shed. They didn't prepare the ground. They put it on some little concrete thingies. And I asked him about it because I knew today Mark was going to tell you about how to do some of this stuff, but he's going to tell you from the perspective of doing it right. So it'll last. But you sure can just throw a shed on some of those little concrete 4x4 post holders. And his has been up maybe 7 years and he does have some cracks in the sheetrock. You know, it settles. He doesn't mind because he didn't pay much for it and it's serving his purpose. But Mark's going to tell us how we can do it right. Because when I have to list one of those with that's sagging, it's really hard to know how to value it. Sometimes it almost just scares a buyer off, you know, as opposed to if it's all solid, you know, people like solid things. And so a couple of these where we've got the sagging floors or the cracked sheetrock, even if they serve your purpose, it's not going to be what you want to sell if you were looking for long-term value. So without further ado, Mark Joffee to present ADUs and beyond. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much.
This down arrow is all you
Yeah.
need to know about in life.
Well, thanks for being here. Hopefully this is a worthwhile talk. I'm not an investor technically. I do a lot of stuff. Kai is the name of my company. Most of my builds are within the historic districts, the North End, East Side. And what I've seen a lot of is in the last 4 years is definitely the use of the space. The city's moving its coding to try to get more density. In places like the historic, that doesn't necessarily gel, but just kind of want to give you my idea from a GC side. So
Here, so put yourself in there.
I got to keep myself in the picture here.
Mhm.
There we go. So just kind of a little bit, like I said, about Kai. Got my notes here. My eyes aren't as good to read that screen. So yep, we've been here since 2013. All our work's there. And then, like I said, we're doing a lot of the stuff in the garage and the ADUs. Let's see, just got to correlate this with what we're doing. This is kind of the stuff that the major stuff I do, just to throw that up there, is we take a lot of the North End homes that start like that. We jack them up like this. We put full basements under them, and then that's the same picture right there. So that's kind of the work we do in the North End on the historic homes. So that's what I'm looking at there. I figured out the computer. So just an overview on, you know, what is an ADU? There's a lot of different things about it. It also applies to investment in terms of, you know, an ADU essentially is an independent primary dwelling on the same parcel of land as the main structure, right? It's an additional living area. To be considered an ADU, it must provide living, sleeping, cooking, and bathroom facilities. So in the North End, for instance, or the city of Boise, if you go and you build a unit that's 700 square feet and you don't do a complete bathroom, you just do a toilet with a sink, or you don't do a complete kitchen, so you've got a sink and a fridge but no dishwasher, then it's not considered an ADU by the city. So there's little codes like that that vary on what you're going to do and how it's going to be applied to your investment or part of your investment. Right. Just kind of get my notes going. Yeah, if you build a complete kitchen, then they will consider it as an ADU. If you don't do a complete kitchen and you don't have a complete bathroom, then they won't consider it as an ADU. So it's more a storage, an office, a workout room, an art studio, something of that nature. And no, doesn't have to at all. No. Generally, you don't want to put those in unless you want to be considered an ADU. Yep. So, you know, it's essentially, it can't be considered a full kitchen or a full bathroom.
Oh,
So if you put in a bathroom, a bathroom that has a shower, a toilet, and a sink, then you've got a full bathroom, and they'll start to be, oh no, this is an ADU when you apply for your permits. If you just have the sink and the shower, it's not considered a full bathroom.
I'm a little bit confused. Do you want it to be
No.
an ADU or you don't want it to be?
It depends on what you want out of it. So when I build, because of who my customers are and when I do my properties, I do want to do an ADU. I want it to be an official ADU. I want to go through the permitting process to be that. But a lot of people that I found that don't want to put all the money into a brand new build, pay for everything, they sometimes just want a bathroom back there. And it's a whole different process in the permitting. It's a lot simpler. Probably lower taxes. I don't know that part for sure, but most likely it's lower fees for sure to build it. So that's just kind of something to think about. And why do people do it? They do it essentially for an extra living space for the homeowners in, accommodate extended family people to come to stay. In majority of cases here, you're doing it because you want to look at essentially potentially generating an income out of that property. You want to increase your property values. There's other areas of it, like it could provide affordable housing. It's sustainable a lot of times. You can make them nice and energy efficient. A lot of people that I'm seeing, they're looking and talking about, I've got this really nice house, but my kids have gone to college. I've got all this space in the backyard. I'm going to go build this nice ADU. I'm going to comfortably live in it. And then I'm going to rent the property out front while I downsize.
Are there restrictions on the number of bedrooms for an ADU?
There's not a restriction on the number of bedrooms, but the city of Boise, and I can't speak for Caldwell or Meridian because I've worked in Boise, is restricted on the square footage.
What about parking spaces?
So it used to be that you had to have 2 parking spots per ADU. That is all changing and that has actually changed already. But we're kind of right in the transition. How many of you know that the city's going through all its new zoning laws?
Yeah.
And that's parking is a lot of that's going away. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's definitely going to be less.
They already published their zoning, right?
They published them and then they're going through the people put in their input and then they're going to ratify it.
Do you have any sense of what's going to happen in the near future? Hopefully not far future, but currently it's still maybe or occupied. So what's like?
I don't. Yes, that is the way it is. I haven't heard anything different at this point.
Yeah, the new zoning rewrite still has the same
Yeah,
laws. I wasn't sure if anyone has any information about when that might shift.
I don't have anything on that. I would say that's still the way for the city of Boise, unfortunately.
And the square footage guideline is at 600 square feet.
I always forget off the top of my head.
800
It's,
based on the
It's-
square footage of your home.
yeah,
What does that mean? Based on the square footage.
So
So-
the bigger your primary house,
Uh-huh.
the bigger you can have your ADU up to a certain square footage.
and it goes back into when I'm kind of going through this, so, how they can, essentially, I'm gonna talk about how they're built and everything else. One of the first things I do.
So who determines that it's an official ADU,
City, when you submit your plans.
like the code
Mhm.
enforcement? office, Or who, like the building code or?
Yeah, it's building code. So this is this right here on this slide is really understanding what you want to build. Because a lot of people I build for, they want it for their space. They want the ADU, everything else. A lot of people like you guys are going to want it for the rentals. So I do think you want the ADUs, you want the full structures. And that's what you're gonna be applying for with the cities. And when you apply with the cities, you've got to get the right approvals on all of it. And you've got to like take pictures, show your neighbors what it's gonna be, get all their signatures. It's quite a process up front. It used to take me about, I don't know, 2 weeks to get everything done. I plan no less than 6 months anymore, just on my bureaucracies. And that's also design, that's architecture, engineers, getting my construction documents, getting all my neighbors' approvals, submitting it to the city and going through the process with the city.
That's changing though, right? You're right.
We'll see. The only consistency is the inconsistency. So really, it's something I do come back to, and it's not just from the permitting side that you need to really understand about it. From the build side, I can see variances in my ADUs of tens of thousands to potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars based on selections, based on choices, based on your design of your buildings. So really understanding how you want to build it, how you want to use it, and spending the time up front to figure that out saves you significant amount of money down the back end of that when you start to actually build. And I've got a couple of slides so one of the ones I was going to show you right here is you've got 2 staircases. These ADUs are actually pretty much the same size. That's a $12,000 staircase. That's a $5,000 staircase. One's metal, one's wood. Those are that's a pretty drastic example, but that's the kind of choices you're going to go through. How you tile them, all your interiors, everything else related to that can definitely add costs. So, trying to keep this in line with that because my notes don't care. Yeah, so if you just go in circles, if you don't know where you want to go with it. I highly recommend if you're doing something from scratch and you're building new. I am going to go over some other designs, whether it's prefab, pre-built, modular, but I'll do that in a sec. But if you're going to do something brand new, highly recommend an architect, engineer. It sounds like, oh, I can do it myself. And then you end up spending a lot of money to fix the problems.
Being that we're starting from the beginning, what's the first thing you consider as an owner to see if you even have enough room to require? And the setback from how far away is it from the house? I mean,
The best, so even myself, like I know it's, in the back of a building, it's a 15-foot setback. You've got 5 feet on either side. If you're dealing in something like the historic districts, you're only allowed 35% lot coverage. Outside of that, they don't really care. But what I always do, and that's what I go back to, is I always start with an architect. And I have a lady that I work with all the time. We come up with the concepts, the ideas, we sit down, we look at all the plots and we say, this is what we can do. And I'm dangerous with the city codes. She knows the city codes. And that's why I go that way, because she's not going to make a mistake on it. And then what the architect does with me is she submits everything to get it through the ADU approval process. And then I take those plans and I put them in for all the building permits. So that's kind of the process I work on. Yep.
Some time ago, it used to be that for a single family lot, you could put 2 attached units on it. If that's still the case, why would I go with an ADU?
Good question. It'd be more that maybe you want to downsize, you want to separate from that main house because you want to rent it out and you want that space. There's no reason you couldn't do attached buildings and make that part of it. Yeah.
An ADU can be attached though, right?
It can. Yeah, it has its own entrances and everything else, but yeah, it can be attached. And the one thing I've always found, an ADU is an additional dwelling unit. It's also the same to me as a little tiny home, except it's attached. But in terms of risks, and doing this kind of stuff, in places like the North End where space is an absolute premium, you're limited to generally 0.14 lots. You're limited to lot coverage. Putting an ADU in the back of an existing investment lot, or in this case, it would have to be your house right now. I've never seen a risk in doing that. Everyone I've built has always had a return on its investment, even with the market doing what it's doing. I still think it's a safe bet. As you move away, as you get less density, as people own more land, you know, that's something you guys would have to run the numbers on and see what it's gonna come in and whether it's works for you guys or not. So that's kind of there. Just so you know, types of buildings, there's a lot of different stuff coming up with buildings. You've got a lot of new builds, which is, you know, building them up from the frame. That's not an ADU, obviously, but something like that. You get your pre-builds, which are these kind of houses here. They could literally come in, like Stacy was saying, you literally drop them on, and I'm going to get into the pricing on a lot of those and how the differences work. You have your panel builds, which I think is something coming in, which is right here where you do your designs and then they deliver panels and it gets put together much quicker. Container homes are, you know, your containers turned into homes. Sheds are kind of like this one here, your pre-built, and then this is a pre-built here. This is part of a structure being delivered. So just kind of give you an overview of the lot of different types and ways you can go. Again, based on your code, based on your regulations, the only thing that's really going to fly in the historic districts is going to be a brand new build. They literally aren't going to pass you for anything else in there at this point. Or they will, but
What about the non-historic district?
oh, I think you could go a bunch of different routes. Yeah, there's so many choices that are coming into play.
All of those will say if you detach a container in the backyard, it has to have its own plumbing, has to be plumbed, correct?
Yeah, to be considered an ADU, you've got to have your living space with all your plumbing, ability to cook, everything else. So I'm going to kind of go through the new build first on the ADUs. This is one of the builds we did. You know, the cost to do a brand new ADU in the north end, again, because primarily where I work, which is generally a garage at the bottom, because you need the space, and about a 600-ish square foot footprint up top, is going to cost you somewhere between 200 and 285,000. But you're talking high end, you're talking solid materials, very, very well built. We have to use wood windows. We can't use anything cheap. We have to use hardy siding that's smooth, not just regular texture. So there's a lot of costs that are thrown in with where I do. I think that 200,000 mark is the lower end outside of the district, outside of the historic districts. 285 is more inside the historic districts. This one was about it was just over like 440 or something for that one. But little things to note that I put this slide in particular. The way you design your stuff, you know, again, it's going off my experience in the north end where you got a lot of gable roof. If you put a roof like this in, you notice that we have to put the walls, if you're under 5 feet, a lot of people put the walls in right there. I've just lost all this square footage right here. So having the right architect, having the right plan where you can build and try to get 5-foot walls out here and raise the height of your building suddenly gives you much greater square footage, much more usable, much more sellable. So it's super key to kind of watch that. Catching up. Yeah.
What's the smallest ADUs that you've ever done above a garage?
About 400. So the city of Boise, I believe it's 21 by 21 feet is what you have to do for the garages. And so we just build right on top of that. Yep.
And are these new garages as well?
Yeah, we have to. So again, a lot of the garages that we work with that are existing, let's say they've got the 18 by 17 or whatever. Generally, the foundations aren't there. We come in, we scrape it, brand new foundations, brand new everything. Yep.
And does that cost include picking up utilities?
Yep. Yeah, and I was talking about earlier. So again, it's just kind of little things that if you're doing an ADU, and again, I'm working with City of Boise, so I know their system with utilities and electrical. So a lot of times you have electrical coming to the house from the alley. You have water coming in from the road to the house. And then what I do is I come in and I'll put the ADU in the back and I'll do a brand new sewer line because a lot of the sewer lines are clay or metal and totally about to break. So I'll do a brand new sewer line from the house all the way out. I'll obviously tie the ADU into it as it goes out. I'll get my electrical and I'll drop it from the house and I'll get a new panel and set up under the ADU. And then I'll bring everything underground through conduit. So you have no wire sitting above you. And so you just have a cleaner look. It's a nicer presentation, a little bit higher rent. And it's actually quite worth it.
There a way to separately meter the ADU?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You can do that if you want. Yeah. You can do metered like that. You can do your, Comcast, all of that, depending. That's just working. Again, going back to really knowing what you want. You can even do separate water meters.
You typically run 200 amp service with your big thing.
Yeah, so I love Idaho Power. Yes, so a lot of the homes, believe it or not, are anywhere from 60 to 100 amps sometimes that have been supplied since 30, 40, 50 years. Idaho Power guarantees 200 amps into your property. So if you're at 60, they won't charge you anything to get you to 200. If you want to go to 400, they will charge you an arm and a leg because they'll come in and they'll look at it and they'll say that transformer doesn't handle it, $8,000, and you upgrade the whole alleyway for everyone else. So don't do that. And the reason I say that is building the ADUs with technologies that we have, insulation, with energy efficiency on appliances. You don't need, if you're, even with the older house and an ADU, if you're looking at trying to get more than 200 amps on a general, I mean, if you're going to do welding and a bunch of really high power stuff, it's different, but generally in a house, you don't need more than that. You can be efficient.
What about electric vehicles being a way of the future and
Yep.
wanting to accommodate for that?
So the code now says for every garage we build, we have to put in an EV charger. The big debate when you go into it is, do you put a 30, a 40, or a 50 amp charger? So we just put a 6-way heavy duty wire from our panel so that they can do any one of those amperage to match whatever car's bought. We generally start with a 30, but it can always be bumped up to a 50. Saying that, the way we generally do it, again, because I haven't, a lot of these aren't really rentals, they're more tied into the house. So the load of that 200 amps is continually shared with the house. So, you're not always using that 50 amps on the car. And maybe you're going to run the dishwasher, the laundry, and have a warm shower, and you need hot water all in the house. So it'll draw more power into the house. And then when you're charging that car, you might not be doing all that stuff in the house, and it'll use it in the garage. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's all worked. I haven't had anyone complain.
So the new law required just in Ada County?
I don't know if that's Ada County or City of Boise. I'm not sure where the EV one comes from, but I know every garage we do now by code, we have to do it. So I'm assuming it's the city. Do you know that?
I don't know that one.
Oh, yeah. Just some real quick things on if we do a new build, again, something to think about where you're going with it. It's super customizable. So we can do whatever we need to during the build. We can change things up if we have to. Generally, a new build is better quality. There's a lot of the flexibility, like I was just saying, in the build to kind of manipulate stuff a bit. And then you also get a builder's warranty. So it's, you're really in there. The cons, it's more expensive and it takes a lot more time. A build like this, a ADU on top of a garage is anywhere from 6 to 8 months to get it done. So a pre-built, which is what a lot of people are talking about. It's where essentially you call a company up and they come in and they're like, take this building and they just drop it right there for you. What a lot of people forget on an ADU, and the reason I put this slide in here is I need to put my slab down, I need all my plumbing down and all my rough work, and I need to make sure it is exactly 100% accurate if they're going to bring a pre-modulated house and drop it right on top there. That cost, sorry, just gonna get my notes here. So I worked it out. Essentially, in the builds I'm doing, the cost of that slab and that rough work is at roughly about 10% of my traditional builds. So if someone says, hey, I'll sell you this house for 150 grand, you're probably going to add on, in my case, is $17,000 to $22,000 to get that slab set up for it. What Stacy said about the shed is a perfectly good, acceptable way to go if you're not going to do an ADU with plumbing and you just want an office. It's a really, really good way to get some value out of a property. Yeah, so it's more the historic. the ones that I've researched on, because I actually really personally, aside from just being the GC, like I think and I'll get into it, but I think the modulated stuff is really going to take off. It's already taking off on a bigger scale, not on a, it's really hard to do a small customized residential scale, but to go build a hotel where you're just repeating the units, it works great. Because of historic regulations, a lot of these might not be able to, it's hard to say, a lot of the pre-builds could be recognized and they could go into the north end. But what I want to point out is all the research I've done shows that it is more expensive at this point to do that than it is to do a new build. So I looked at some and I've got a couple examples. They were up to $660,000. I can build an entire house for less than that.
Is this the panel stuff too, or?
No, this is just the modulated pre-built, like you work, and I'm also talking higher end. I'm not talking just like a standard trailer home. Like you work with an architect, they design the house, they build it 6 days in the factory. They deliver it in 2 days and then you build it in like 2 months kind of thing. Yeah, but I would love to do it. It would be a great way to go, but where I build, it's just too expensive. And for the quality that I build, it's too expensive. So again, going into these pre-builts there, I saw a bunch out there for 150,000 and, just to put them out in the yard, it worked great, but you're not going to get much with them. And they're probably going to be worse than the shed put down at Stacy's friend's house. There is the savings, they're faster construction, they're energy efficient. They use a lot less materials to get them built. So there's a sales side on the environmental side. The consistent quality is pretty good, but not the best. And then, like I said, the impact environmentally, it's there, but then you've also got transport and a bunch of other stuff that goes with it. The cons, it's not as customizable. So what I found with the majority of them is they've got 12 models. Here's your choice. Yes, they've got good materials. Yes, they're good suppliers, but there's really not a lot of flexibility up front. Once you're building, there's even less. And then you have the prep costs that go on top of it that they don't talk about. So I think the next one is, so like this was one example I had. So Blue Homes, a 600 square foot, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. I thought this was great, starting at $250,000. And then it was like, if you wanted any kind of choice, paint color, I got a feeling if I really dwelled into this, it'd probably be about 300 to 400,000 just to get the unit. Their claims it's a green build, but I didn't even really know what that was. They never told me anything about why it was green. Yeah. They said it's 50% faster than a new build. They had a little graph. I hear you on it. It looked pretty decent. It might be the case. And then it said it used 30% less material. I saw up to 60% with other pre-made manufacturers. I don't know. This was the other one. This is the one that I was going to show you. Is again 620 square foot, very modern looking. Just to build it is 384,000. To do the site work is 168. To transport it is 50. To design, engineer, and permit it is 60,000 for a total of $661,000. That is huge. The reason these things are booming, and I think we're Idaho, we're behind the times. We're building homes here in the north end from about $250 a square foot all the way up to $385 a square foot. Again, depending on the style, the size, what we're building, material selections. These units are being bought in California. They're being bought in states like, or areas like Seattle, where you're at $500 plus a square foot. That's where they start to make sense right now. I do think, again, it will materialize in the future that these will become viable, but not at the moment, in my view. So I did some search on Idaho modular home builders, and I went through and tried to find a bunch there. I found the Nassau builders, but these were, again, the guys building for the big projects, the big boys. They wouldn't even look at us. They probably wouldn't even return a phone call. These kit custom home builders, they were very traditional building type homes here in Boise, very cabin looking, I think very outdated in a lot of what they did. I couldn't get some pricing out of them. They had one new design that was okay. The company in Idaho that I found that kind of came closest to what I'm looking to try to do is a company called Idea Box, sorry. And they had some really nice modern designs. They looked like they were well built with the materials. I didn't research the pricing on them, but I would guarantee just looking at them, I'd probably buy everyone here dinner, but I would believe that what I can build for is still cheaper than what they can deliver for. So that's kind of a go there. And then this was just one that I thought was really cool, this modern shed idea. And it goes back to, we're talking about the ADUs, but a lot of people want an office space, or I'm going to send my kids outside to play. I don't need the bathroom. I don't need the kitchen. I don't need everything else. These guys were a pretty cool looking company. Again, I couldn't get pricing out of them, but there's some just really nice styles and designs on it. So this brings me out to wall panels, which I've built, not wall panels. I've had walls pre-cut and then built. So I don't have to sit there and cut everything and have all the waste. I've never gone to the wall panels myself, but I think this is the next step that's going to happen in Idaho from an investment side, from a being able to bring the prices down and being able to be price competitive. Is you're going to have these panels that you're going to work with a designer. They're going to build the walls in a factory or facility. They're going to ship them out to your job. And then instead of taking, sorry, I have the actual time frame on it. No, I lied. I didn't have time frame on that. Sorry. But this to me is, I'm definitely thinking that this is going to be the next step that I do is using panels to help build. I think it's definitely going to help with the price. The customizable, it does speed up the construction. I don't have the time frame. There's less waste, and a lot of these are well built. You can see things like that. Zip is a really nice system. The cons, you are limited completely in the design. Like once you get going, like you can't really just start changing stuff. There is possible complexities if they don't do the joins right, that you end up with just not a well set up house. That comes down to knowing your framers. And then one of the things that I found out, which a lot of people didn't think about, if you don't time it correctly and you have all these panels built and they ship them and then you store them on a property and they get wet and they're not protected, or they're sitting where they start to, over time bend. So there's little details like that in terms of logistics that you would have to work out just to get them on property on time. The future of building is where we're kind of going on this. I think prefab is definitely going to become a thing. It's not here in Idaho yet, as I've stated. I think one of the things that is going to happen that really could change it is all this 3D printing. I don't know if you guys, anyone's seen them?
It's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. Essentially, they're 3D printers and they're huge. And they just kind of come through and they do layers. They literally just backwards and forwards and they just build your house.
How do they build in the electrical and plumbing?
So that's one of the issues for sure. So in a house like this, you can see they've done the shell just, and you're gonna have to probably still do something on the inside. Or, the ICF block, the foam block that they build with. I've built with those. They're probably gonna come up with a way to carve inside the walls. So you can run your electrical, you can run everything else, all your HVAC, mechanical, would kind of have to come more, it'd be through a chase or through something in the flooring. The sustainable part, I think whether you believe in environmental or not, I do, but I think the sustainable part is going to be a much bigger selling point. How did you build your house? What were the paints you used? What's the materials you used? What was your waste? I think buyers are going to start looking at that more and more, especially for single family homes. So I think it's something that if you can show I built with this product, this is what I did, I think you can start to add value. Energy efficiency is a huge one. I'm building a home right now called a FIAS certified house. It's a 3,400 square foot home I could probably heat with a candle. Something I truly try to, and again, it's from an investment perspective. The house is, you can't get a more energy efficient house anywhere in the United States in terms of it. It's certified. We do all the blower tests. Some of the walls are 11 inches thick. But it is not a good environmental house, in my view, and it's definitely not a good house for an investor. Because you've spent so much money to create this envelope, you're never going to see a return on it. It's just too much. It's over the top. The materials I've used more foam, blowing insulation than I care to imagine of how much I've destroyed toxic stuff in the air. But it's energy efficient. So just something to keep, like, we probably spent close to $250,000 to $300,000 to get to this envelope of this house, which you'd never make your money back on. The other thing that I think is really helping with ADUs with these kind of builds is smart homes. So everything we're doing, we are putting in, you can turn on the lights, do your heating, all your security cameras, your doors, everything like that. So when we build the homes, we're definitely thinking about a lot of that, and it's really adding value. People want to bring in their apps on Airbnb. They want to open the door, it lets them in. So that's something to think about. And then just COVID kind of drove it. I think there's still a little bit of there, not as much. It's just the multifunctional spaces for people to go out and do different things. So that's kind of where I was looking at from the future of building. Investment, I don't think you can lose on an ADU or an extra building in your properties right now in this market. Even if it's, like Stacy's saying, it's kind of hitting its bottom, it's going to go back up. I think that they're a really good investment. Anything from your small little shed to your full-on ADU. Cities like Boise are looking for the density, so they're wanting to help you get these properties into play. I do think it increases the property value, like we spoke about. I think if you're looking, not so much for you guys, but the homeowner lifestyles living on those properties, and then options for you guys, obviously, on the rentals on the short term and the long term. And that is really it. I don't really have much more to add. I'm happy to answer all your questions.
Awesome.
Sounds like you're a builder, you may not know this, but if I have a property that has an ADU already on it, it's there when I bought the house.
Mhm.
And I don't know that they did that legally.
They probably, a lot of them aren't.
How one knew about that, or why?
Am I being recorded? You know, and a lot of people, I've seen it, not, I can't say do it or not, but a lot of people just don't do anything about it. You know, the way I understand the city, there's the city that creates the rules and the regs. There's code enforcement that would enforce that code of the ADU. And then in my case, I've got a third entity, which is the historic. They don't really communicate that well with each other. I think more where you would have, and where I've seen the issues with the ADUs like that, is a neighbor's complained or someone doesn't want it, and then it gets pushed into code enforcement, and then they will follow up with that. That's it.
Then what do you know about it? I mean, it's on the list somewhere, but haven't heard anything about it. Things like, I don't know, motorhomes, trailers, that type of thing.
I don't know.
Much about.
Yeah, that I've just never dealt with.
Or it's just an old fashioned tiny house. Old fashioned, the newfangled, right?
Yeah.
A tiny house that gets hauled in on a trailer, it's on wheels or whatever. Do you know anything about that?
No, just because I've never dealt with them. I know they're around. I know if you go on Hill Road and 15th, as you cross that stop sign, that four-way stop sign, if you look to the southwest, there was a lady there that had an Airstream trailer,
Right.
and that has been used as an Airbnb for a long time, as far as I know. So I know they're out there.
Does anybody else know about tiny homes? So when I checked into it maybe 3 years ago, it seemed like impossible.
Yeah.
It's not what we're gonna let
Bridget knows about tiny
I,
homes.
I know one that got reported code enforcement, we had to move it, we had one on wheels, and basically it's kind of up to, if your neighbors report it, then they're not legal, and I think they're just so complicated right now for this thing to figure out what to do with them with code, that it hasn't really moved. They had a little pilot about, like the ADU pilot, and I think they helped some listening sessions for tiny homes, but nothing to come out of it. So unless you're putting them in an RV park with hookups or in, like an unincorporated area right now in the city, they're kind of enough though. But they're really efficient and really easy to kind of pull in and hook up.
The biggest issue,
Plumbing.
the biggest issue I see is the city wants the density, and then you just get certain pockets that fight back against it and innovation. And it's one of my frustrations with Idaho sometimes is like, well, son, we've always done it this way, and that's the way we're gonna do it. And you're like, but things are changing. But the cities, everything I've seen from the city, I've had really good relationships with them. I think they're really trying. They're just trying to play that. How do we balance this out? How do we make it best for the majority of the community?
And you mentioned they're kind of incentivizing or at least like trying to help. In what ways is it, are they like,
Well, things like the parking used to be that when you used to build the ADUs, you had to provide 2 parking spots minimum, and now you don't. So it just allows you to use better space, allows you to set I did an ADU when that was still enforced, and I would have completely redesigned the whole project had I not had to do that.
So what is the parking?
None.
It's none, I think, yeah, it's none.
There's no,
There's no requirement anymore.
Linda?
To me, that's unfortunate, because especially with the fence, and you've got all those cars in the street,
Mhm.
and they're just kind of compounded. And of course, you have.
Yeah.
High Street, you know, and it's just gonna be a nightmare.
Yeah.
in the north end.
No, and that's what the city's trying to deal with and sort out. Now, I will say, I live in the north end, and I don't know anyone who uses their garage for a car. It's all storage. But I hear the argument. Yeah.
Question about, what about building a garage and using modular building systems? Is that
I
feasible or any idea?
I know in the research I didn't come across anything that was financially feasible, but there's definitely units out there. There's definitely things out there that can make it happen really efficiently and effectively, just not. Again, because we're still in that price range, they just don't financially work out yet.
So it's better just to stick.
At the moment, it's going to change, and that's I really want to emphasize that, like, that's where we are now today. The technology on these pre-builds, the way they're starting to market them, it's. In 10 years, the speech would be totally different.
what's gonna change to make that so?
You know, they're starting to figure out, like I say, on the big scale, they're figuring it out, how to do it, how to build it, how to, when you repetitively just do stuff, they can do it. As soon as you move to the smaller customizable side, they just don't have the tools and manufacturing to do it at this point. One of the things is Idaho doesn't have a facility to do it. So if you're doing anything in Idaho right now, you're talking to Seattle, you're talking to California, you're talking to the East Coast. So now you've added in all these shipping costs. I've talked to friends on, if anyone wants to invest, I want to set up a wall panel company here. I think it's a huge opportunity in Boise or in Idaho to do that. You've got all your mountain communities. McCall's doing a lot of stuff with pre-built already. They've ramped up what they do in McCall over the years. BMC's been pretty good on getting that program up, and now Builders Source, sorry. So I think just as it becomes more popular and as there's more demand for it, people are going to invest to put the facilities in to get it done.
Did you talk to United Family Homes at all? Are they in that same price point?
So I didn't talk to them directly, but they essentially represent, I think it was Kit Homes.
Okay.
So Kit Homes builds their homes and then they're a distributor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I saw that in the notes.
Yeah.
And they were, like I said, they were just to me, they look very old school. Yes, I think the pricing would be there and I never got that, but that would be something that you could do to just do the sheds and do stuff.
Yeah, so I think United Family Homes was one that they all have that sort of, that rectangular look to them, but they came and spoke to AVID a few years ago. And their price per square foot was lower, but you could, if you wanted the finishes, of course, you're gonna, like Mark said, get your price up, and then you still have, they would help you find a concrete guy and help you get the infrastructure, but that's gonna be, you know, a significant amount of the cost as well. And I did find that with theirs, that they did look a little bit more, you could charm them
Yeah.
up a little bit with a cute porch, but
Yep.
they weren't those modern ones that you showed.
Yeah.
Mhm. Is there, Sam?
Is there construction financing available for the pre-built?
I don't know that. I've never had to go that far on any of them, so I can't say.
Yeah, there was, they had, the company that we had, that United Family Homes had a lender they worked with, and it was a higher interest rate type of construction sort of financing. But then once it's all in place, it's normal financing, normal appraisal. There's a couple decisions you would make, which would make it either a manufactured home, because it's got the seam in the middle or something, versus everything is 100% to normal code, so it's not considered manufactured, even though it's built in a factory, it's considered stick built.
Well, there's no construction financing for manufacturing. The ones with the cement,
Mhm.
for investors or builders,
There's some, if it's on a foundation, you can get a loan.
for owner occupant.
Oh, right. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, so here is, you thought we were done. You're like, sweet, it's over, I'm done. Here's where we crowd together on the screen here. All right, guys. This is Mark Joffee. He is a general contractor with Kai LLC. And he has told us an awful lot today about ADUs and what to know about the various types of extra space that you can add onto your property, whether it's a fancy shed or a truly custom structure that you're building from scratch, attached or detached. And let's do some highlights here, Mark. What I heard was the first thing you want to do is you want to ask yourself these two questions first. First, you want to find out, can I do this? Do I have the space legally to use up with the setbacks? And you can do that by calling planning and zoning. They can look up what you've already got, or you can call an architect. They also will know. And the second thing you need to ask yourself is, do I want an official formal ADU or not? You can build something that doesn't need to meet all the requirements of a dwelling unit if it's not meant for living in. And the difference there is going to be whether it has a full kitchen and a full bathroom. And so your standards might be a little bit more affordable or easier, I guess, if it's not official.
Yeah, that's a lot simpler if it's not official.
Okay.
And you're not putting in the full bathroom or the full kitchen.
The city wants density. We need housing units, they've been saying for quite some time, and they've already loosened up whether you don't need parking for an ADU right now. And they're supposedly going to make it easier to add dwelling units. But at this time, if you are building an ADU on your own property, they're only going to approve it if it's one of the units is owner occupied. We did have someone do a workaround where their family member was able to owner occupy it. Their kid went to BSU, so they built the ADU and got their kid in the house, and supposedly it was official. So there's always a will, where there's a will, there's a way. But if you're working in a historic district like Mark does, where he's doing a lot of high quality stuff, he's also running into a lot of extra hurdles. So noticing whether you're in any specific districts is going to be a real big factor in there. And so far, the real pros and cons that he went through, it sounds like just you get the most flexibility, customization, and everything you need by simply having someone like Mark come and build it from scratch on site. But there are other options to make it more affordable, like the pre-built walls and other things that Mark expects to becoming more competitive, I guess, specifically in Idaho as time goes on. Or you can sacrifice style and quality. There might be a greater cost differential for some of the, like, what was it? Not United Family Homes, but it's
Kid homes.
Yeah.
Idea box.
Yeah.
Yep.
So some of those will help you do it all right on but they just might not have the same level of quality, and maybe you can save some money there. But when you're running your numbers and pricing that out, remember that 10% of the cost of these is typically for the slab and rough work.
10% of my cost is definitely the run work. So you're looking right now in the current market on a 500-ish to 700 square foot, $17,000 to $20,000 to set that slab and the rough work for the groundwork.
And then more money for the power and the plumbing to be connected.
You would need all the utilities, which is generally somewhere around 6,500 to 8,500, again, just depending what your style is.
Okay, so now we've added about 30 grand onto the
Yeah,
cost.
same thing.
Okay, and then also the cost of transportation. So when you are looking at these more portable units, if you're comparing it to something that you might do stick built, just remember to make it apples to apples and add some money on for that. But the future is going smart homes, eco-friendly, multifunctional, and probably more prefabbed than it is right now. Those things will start to come ahead potentially in their cost benefits,
Very much so.
especially as we increase density.
Well, that's a great summary.
Thank you, AVID Investors. Thank you, everyone.